Hey there, and welcome to The Lever, the show where we break down how the evolution of technology will shift leverage more in the worker's favor than ever before. This isn't your mother's leadership or HR podcast talking about hybrid work as the future. That's not the future. That's now. We're talking about how major innovations in AI, robotics, automation, and Web3 will fundamentally change the role of humans at work for the better. My team and I sought out 25 of the most intelligent minds in economics, investing, academia, and business to determine the driving forces behind this monumental shift. Throughout this show, we'll explore captivating topics like how much a human worker is worth, our ongoing pursuit for work's purpose, what the future of human performance measurement looks like, and how top-tier talent could have a baseball card-like representation in years to come. I'm your host, Drew Fortin. Let's get to it. Thank you all for continuing this journey through technology's impact on the future of work. In the last episode, we covered the sticky question, what is the value of a human? And we had a wide range of reaction from our guest contributors. And while that was more of an existential question of valuing a human, let's now get into the nitty-gritty of how employees in today's world are evaluated and what we can expect in the future with the rise of new technologies like AI and Web3. I'm sure you all recognize this. Resumes have been the standard for evaluating employee experience forever, also known as a CV, which comes from the Latin phrase curriculum vitae, meaning course of life. Resume writing generates almost $3 billion annually, an industry built on positioning candidates to the coveted job.
You could think of a transformation of a resume, right? Where a resume in the past has been a set of experiences that encourages a potential employer to think about the things or imagine the things that they did.
That's Charlie Olson, Stanford grad, Forbes 30 under 30, and CEO of Pando Pooling.
Maybe there's even some baseball statistics around, hard challenges that were overcome. Mm-hmm. I think the resume of the future, to your point, is here are my attributes. Yeah. Here are the things that I am really good at, and I can prove to you that I'm really good at them. And based on those attributes, here's what you can expect my impact will be on your organization.
We talked about the value of a human at work in our last episode, but if you don't know someone well, how do you validate their value creation abilities and correlate it to your business? The current resume can't be the answer. Charlie mentioned baseball statistics. So allow me to introduce this new concept being developed by some up-and-coming Web3 companies. I like to call it Moneyball for business. That is, of course, a reference to the movie Moneyball, starring my identical twin, Brad Pitt, where as head coach of the 2002 Oakland Athletics, he imparts a statistical-based approach to evaluating players that we call sabermetrics. Picture a standard baseball card. Let's take something simple, like batting average. For generations, batting average was the marker for a successful hitter. You take the number of hits divided by the number of at-bats and you get a percentage. Classically, the pursuit of a 400 batting average was highly coveted. But at a certain point, this system proved to be flawed, as it did not take into account all the different ways that a player could get on the base, like walks, hit by pitch, etc. This is where on-base percentage came into the picture. But that was still a flawed system because it did not take into account players who would hit a single, double, triple, or a home run. These hits required a value attached to them to better accurately display how productive the hitter was to overall success of the team. This value is called the slugging percentage. The modern statistic that is used is a combination of the two stats called the on-base plus slugging, OPS, and that's become a better predictor of a player's success. The Oakland Athletics famously used the concept in 2002, but they had every baseball critic in the world telling them that they were crazy and that they were not relying on gut to ultimately determine a player's major league fate. They proved their critics wrong when they became the first team in history to win 20 straight games. Sabermetrics proliferated the game of baseball, and 2 years later, the Boston Red Sox used the same system to win their first World Series in 86 years. I know. Sports analogies are very overdone, especially in business, but this is an exception to that rule. We benefit greatly from taking the lead from professional sports here. So let's shift our sights back to the topic here and now. With so much business intelligence, an industry currently valued at nearly $30 billion and expected to double by 2030, there is no standard for measuring and validating worker performance.
If anyone could figure this one out, they would be multi-gazillionaires.
We still have stories about how people plagiarize elements of their resume.
Right.
It's still a gap. And there's only so much as a recruiter or as a startup trying to hire really great people really quickly that you can check on. And to think about how we can use these tools to, again, be more efficient so that we can focus on the things that we care about the most.
Most of us claim to be good listeners, results-driven, and proficient in tools like Excel, but are we actually? Right now, there are ways to evaluate candidate skills in the interview process. We see this all the time, with engineers being tested in the room, or the dreaded folklore Google question.
How much does the Empire State Building weigh?
We're all getting a little better at interviewing these days, but newer innovation in Web3 may have a way to standardize these skill validations by industry.
The idea of using Web3 and blockchain to track your achievements, right, over time is something that is extremely exciting to see.
This is Corey Heimel, VP of Product at Gigster and Web3 consultant.
I've kind of consulted on a number of projects, right, that are looking to see how can you build workplace credentialing that's put on chain. So just, kind of to the point of that, whenever you move in between companies, you can take that history with you. And if we think about, how we perceive the future of work as being more fluid and people actually moving in and out of jobs more frequently, you almost have to have that. And you need this anchoring mechanism to measure people at some common level. We have that currently in the regular world. It's like a college degree, right? Like it's kind of like a baseline. Everyone can look at it and be like, all right, you got a degree. I know that some level that this guy can do something.
The over-reliance on things like college degrees as a means to predict job performance isn't great. Not to mention the bias and lack of diversity it introduces. We see workers in the modern world struggling to stand out in a sea of competing candidates. As a result, we stretch the truth simply to get the call or to get that opportunity at the internal promotion. Something that's third-party validated could level the playing field for all involved. Dr. Adam Ozimek, chief economist at Washington think tank Economic Innovation Group and former chief economist at Upwork, has been looking into this.
One of the advantages of digital labor markets now on various platforms is you do have like outcomes measures that help indicate your sort of success rate, your value as a worker. And those are extremely valuable proof points when you're trying to hire someone outside of your labor market.
But we're at the beginning of our journey into having validated performance measurement, just as our role at work is evolving in a big way. How do our performance measurements change with tech? Here's Joyce Sidopoulos, co-founder and chief of operations at Mass Robotics, to explain.
So evaluating an individual when you have robots doing the mundane tasks that they used to do. I mean, you used to be evaluated on how much you produced. Right. That was, if you could make 10 boxes or something versus 20 boxes, you'd get higher evaluation if you made the 20. Bringing in robots to do some of those simpler tasks, I think the overall employee is going to be more judged on how do we make it more efficient. Maybe we're still making 20, but maybe there's no returns because they're actually made perfectly. So rather than the amount that they're doing, the 20, it's maybe the perfection of those 20. Or the less waste of those 20.
Creating a standard and then validating worker performance against it will undoubtedly impact the bottom line. Joyce's comment speaks to efficiency and outcomes, outpacing measurements of classic inputs and outputs. Now, the question of fair and validated performance standards transcends candidates. This impacts all workers. It impacts you. Yes, you deserve to be evaluated fairly. But the system, as it stands now, is balanced in the employer's favor. Liz Wilkie, principal economist at Gusto, breaks it down.
Performance reviews are conducted in wildly different ways across companies. It doesn't have to be that way per se, right? We have industrial standards for many, many things, right? And professional standards for many, many things. We've just never done it for performance, right? Because there's never been a reason to. But there might be a reason to now. A lot of that data, like internal assessments, performance reviews, portfolios of work, have belonged to the company. And I think the single most important question that we ought to be asking ourselves is, can we redefine some of that data ownership such that the worker themselves can share it with other people. I think that the standardization of certain parts of performance or certain parts of skills within industries is sort of the first step, because then you can build off of that standard, right? Everybody can be trained on it.
There are many reasons why having standardized performance measures is so difficult. Take the same role in the same industry, but different companies, and they can have completely different responsibilities and expectations of what good performance looks like. Just look at how varied job descriptions can be for the same role. How many different types of product managers are there? So input isn't that helpful. And as we saw in the Moneyball example, measuring outputs isn't necessarily a strong predictor of success either. Third-party reviews like we see on Amazon or Google are the closest thing we have to validation. But that type of system doesn't really exist for individuals. LinkedIn is attempting this, but reviews don't translate as strongly to worker performance. Enter Web3 again. Here's Sherman Voshmagir, author of Token Economy and director of crypto economics at the University of Vienna.
In Web3, once these kind of self-sovereign attestations and credentials become a bit more sophisticated, because we're still in the very, very early stages, this just makes it my personal credentials more portable. Data becomes more portable. You're more sovereign.
The promise of Web3 is that it can provide complete individual ownership of your data. No other entity can. And if there were even a few standardized metrics, like maybe the ones we talked about last episode, judgment, leadership, network effect, creativity, strategic acumen, we could see those tracked through an individual's career, all validated. And it's not far off. There's a company called Disco that raised $9 million in venture-backed funding last year, trying to make this a reality. And there are many more. There are some tricky problems on the horizon for this type of system. I think back to some bad-mannered Google reviews on our family's favorite Thai restaurant.
It could also bear some threats, right? Like if somebody gave you a really bad evaluation on something, like you can never get rid of it. I don't know. It's like, how do you handle credentials that ex-boss gave you about the performance you did in your job that is not really based on how you personally perceive your contributions to the job, but maybe there was some resentment that people had in your prior job. And we have to be very careful how we design these attestation systems that would be relevant for the workforce. I think we need to think about the threats much more than the potentials in this case.
Personally, I'm back and forth on if people would truly leave bad reviews on such a system. But even in a system with only good reviews, you could start to position skills and talent based off of who ranked it. After all, Google built a whole search empire that ranked off of positive sentiment. This space becomes trickier. How do you know if your current employee is actually doing an effective job? Megan Keeney Anderson leads the marketing for generative AI platform Jasper, and she explains this issue.
So I think in this world, we're going to need to reevaluate everything. We're going to need to think about the ways that we measure our success. We're going to need to think about the ways that we train and measure our employees.
And that's the real challenge, right? How do we measure quality and impact of human work in a future where the measures of success are increasingly unquantifiable?
It's so subjective still today. Perhaps it shouldn't be, but it really is. And that makes it hard sometimes for people to embrace fully, is because it can feel very subjective. You know, one manager might view someone one way and another views them another. So it's one of those things that's almost like a necessary evil. And I wish that it could be better, not just in being objective, but in giving people real tangible feedback that they can use.
This balance between the subjective and objective is crucial to evaluating employees. It's a delicate balance. People like Charlie Olson have started to think holistically because measuring outcomes might not be the best option for assessing individuals anymore.
The performance management, I think, is inherently fraught with challenges, the biggest of which is objectivity and data. It is very hard, I think, to accurately assess the value that a person brings in all of their in all elements of their role and their personhood. And I think that we are doing better as a kind of like business community in finding ways to track value and track output. And we're getting better at thinking more holistically about what it looks like to grade, how we think about grading a talented performer, et cetera. I do wonder, Drew, whether or not, the kind of rapid changes in AI really will also add a huge, kind of question mark to this question that you're asking, which is, if productivity per employee is about to shoot through the roof, how quickly companies and employers are going to react to a very rapidly changing environment where perhaps certain people and certain functions aren't needed in the same way.
This is an especially hot topic for investors and VC firms who are putting a lot of money behind unproven, nascent technologies. There isn't data available yet to validate the plan, so oftentimes there's a value judgment being made of the founder themselves.
We spent a lot of time thinking about this because we've invested in startups in this space. And the toughest challenge is always trying to standardize anything when you're evaluating humans, because we're all so unique.
This is Shuo Chen, general partner at IOVC and longtime faculty at UC Berkeley.
It really ultimately does come down to, how do we have an overall framework that helps us not just attract, but also retain and develop talent, but also how do we allow for enough flexibility that we could give people the space to develop and grow at their own respective paces. It's this tough tension between, well, business has got to do what it's got to do, and its top priority isn't to help improve the performance reviews of its employees and individuals. But then you have this other tension where for individuals, their top priority is to maximize for their own learning and growth. And so oftentimes, if they aren't able to do it within one structure, they move to a different startup, they go to a different company, and they try to seek for a structure that is more personalized for their own individual personal success.
So we've covered a lot of ground on where we are right now, but what about the future? I believe we are just about at the top of the hill. We are so close to the sun, hitting our face on the other side and seeing this valley that we couldn't see before. Where will the future of performance measurement and standardization of human abilities end up? Is it too far off to know?
I believe that a goal-based approach that's really a shared performance management system within an organization is a way to think about the future. And I think companies are trying to do this, but unfortunately, I also think that they try to combine too many goals at once. I think agnostic of a lot of things, a goal-based shared approach, performance management, could be a really strong way to build almost a resume of goal attainment.
I know I've posed a lot of questions in this episode. I think we might benefit from summarizing a bit of the things we learned and the answers. 1, we lack performance measurement standards. 2, there's a huge market opportunity waiting to be filled. 3, we're headed in the direction of the Moneyball example. 4, standardized metrics level the playing field for the worker and the employer at the same time. 5, benchmarks let us know where our work stands and will play that much more into compensation and title. Your career is the greatest asset you own. Workers are now, more than ever, on a quest to find work that aligns with their values, to be with others who share them, and have a career that has an impact on the world. What kind of work do you want to see in your lifetime?
Now I see increasingly more portfolio careers, not just in the sense that people would try many things throughout their career in the end, but that many people would try out many things in their career at the same time. And oftentimes those tended to be the most committed, the most ambitious, the most interesting people to work with because they're able to connect the dots across so many categories.
Relationships are defined by our expectations of the people that are in that relationship, right? And what we think we deserve or can expect in that relationship and what we get, right? Our joy or our misery is in the difference between what we expect in that relationship and what we actually receive on both sides, employers and employees. I think that the task for us isn't to think about how to make the perfect relationship. The task for us is how to create opportunities, as many as possible, for humans to find dignity, excitement in their work, or to leave their work and try something else, right? In the pursuit of a relationship where they can give what the employer is expecting and they can receive what they expect or want from an employer.
Regardless of how we are evaluated, we strive to find work that is meaningful and impactful. The hope is that technology that enables portability of these evaluations will help and not hinder performance evaluation for any future candidates. We all want to win the World Series in our lifetime. It's our duty to ensure these tools get us there and not curse us for another 86 years.
One of the things that I, believe is that, if you choose a career of meaning and purpose, one that aligns with, skills that you have, including, your passions, you're more likely to do well, and you're more likely to create value and impress people and enjoy the ride a hell of a lot more.
Performance measurement is still in its infancy, but emerging technologies and worker demands seem to be bringing us in one direction. What do you think? Let me know. Drop us a line at levershow.com. Join me next time for our final episode of this season, where we discuss how the evolution of technology will empower future employees to manage their own career development. I'm Drew Fortin, and thank you for tuning in to The Lever. And as always, remember, with technology, our leverage is limitless. Let's embrace it and change the world.